Hey everyone, and welcome to this Forge College Explainer. I'm so pumped you're joining me today because honestly, we're tackling one of the absolute most rewarding challenges in this whole learning journey. We're diving into designing your reflective argument. We're finally taking all of that high-level abstract blockchain philosophy and we're engineering it right into a tightly constructed, undeniable capstone argument. Basically, we're grabbing those ideas floating around in the clouds and bolting them firmly to the ground. So let's get right into it. Now, you might be wondering, how do you actually turn abstract philosophy into a bulletproof argument? I mean, we've all been there, right? Staring at a blank page, that cursor just blinking mockingly at you, wondering how on earth to connect massive concepts like decentralization or trustless systems to a real-world problem without sounding, well, like a sci-fi novelist. Well, here's the secret. We are not going to treat this like a creative writing exercise. No way. Instead, we're going to treat this essay like a mechanical assembly. We're building a machine, part by part. And looking at our blueprint journey, we didn't just magically arrive here. Think back to Lesson 1, Vocabulary. That's where we gathered our raw materials. Then in our previous lesson, From Philosophy to Practical Criteria, we shaped those materials into actual evaluation tools. And today? Well, today is all about the blueprint. We are taking those inputs and locking them together into a fully structured, peer-review-ready outline. Okay, so let's quickly run through our agenda for this 60-minute build session. We're going to start in the drafting room, then move on to assembling the thesis and problem, selecting criteria and evidence, body construction, the impact formula, and finally a quality control check. All right, Section 1, the drafting room, where we define your exact capstone deliverables. So here's what we actually need to produce today. It's a pretty straightforward list. A structured outline, a drafted introduction, and just one substantive body section. And what's actually super fascinating here is what's missing from this list. You are not writing a final, perfectly polished masterpiece today. Nope, you're just building a project increment. It just needs to be structurally sound enough so you can hand it over for peer review and let your classmates stress test it. Moving on to Section 2, assembling the thesis and problem. This is where we literally build the engine of your essay. Take a look at the contrast here. On the left side, we've got a super vague thesis. Blockchain is better for health data. This is a classic mistake. It's basically claiming that blockchain is going to magically cure the common cold. It's way too broad and frankly, completely impossible to prove. But check out the right side. Now that is a precision thesis. A permissioned ledger with strong privacy preserves patient agency. See how we're using our precise vocabulary from Lesson 1? Terms like permissioned ledger and patient agency. They create this perfectly bounded, testable claim. And remember, precision in your terminology is the absolute foundation of a strong argument. Now, right underneath that precision thesis goes your problem statement. So what is this exactly? It's a short, maybe 150 to 200-word description that clearly names the real-world problem, the stakeholders affected, and, this is absolutely crucial, the specific failure modes of past solutions. Basically, why did the old way break? This anchors your whole argument because it tells your reader exactly which broken mechanisms your thesis is promising to fix. Okay, Section 3, selecting criteria and evidence. It is time to lock in your proof. Now, what's really interesting about this next setup is how an evidence plan spec sheet acts like a vital diagnostic tool. You list out your source, exactly what it proves, and, critically, its limitations. Now, why on earth would we deliberately point out our own limitations? Well, because noting that a study, say, had a small sample size acts as a safety factor. It actively prevents you from overclaiming. Look, in the world of technology, overconfidence will absolutely destroy your credibility. So acknowledging exactly where your evidence falls short actually makes your argument way stronger and much more resilient to critique. Next up is Section 4, drafting the introduction and body section. Let's get into the heavy construction. So if you follow this totally foolproof, 4-step mechanical flow, your body paragraph simply will not break down under peer review. Period. It goes like this. First, you start with a topic sentence that makes a clear claim. Second, you present your evidence. Third, you explicitly apply your evaluation criteria to that evidence. And fourth, you close it all out with an impact statement. It's just a highly reliable, perfectly repeatable loop. And when you're actually writing this out, you have to explicitly tie your evidence back to your criteria. Seriously, do not make your reader guess. Literally just write it out. Under criterion A, provable execution, evidence 1 indicates. Use this exact phrasing. It creates this beautifully clear, logical bridge that forces you to prove your point using the exact rules you established earlier in the course. All right, moving to Section 5, the formula where we articulate your impact. If staring at a blank page makes you a bit nervous, well, this foolproof mathematical equation is going to be your new best friend. It goes condition plus mechanism plus measurable outcome equals impact. We are taking the guesswork completely out of the writing process here and treating outcomes like an exact science. Let's actually break down a flawless example using this formula. If a permissioned ledger is adopted, okay, that's your condition. Then patient consent tracking, boom, that is your mechanism. Reduces erroneous data sharing by 40%. And there is your measurable outcome. It's like a perfect puzzle coming together. And you can even add a little qualifier at the end, something like assuming pilot conditions scale, to keep your claim completely scientifically rigorous. It's clear, it's testable, and it is incredibly persuasive. And finally, Section 6, the quality control checkpoint. Let's run through this checklist rapid fire before we hand this off to our classmates. Does your thesis use Lesson 1 vocabulary? Check. Is your evidence directly mapped to your criteria? Check. Did you state the limitations of your sources so you don't overclaim? Check. And lastly, did you include ethical mitigation? I really want to pause on this one for a second, because managing trade-offs is a purely operational thing. Over in Web3, recognizing the potential failures of a system and designing mechanical mitigations for them, that's not just an afterthought, it's an integral part of the machine itself. Now, I want to really highlight this quote because it points out the single most common mechanical failure we see in these capstone essays. Do not conflate normative claims with evidence. Look, a normative claim is basically a philosophical hope, like saying decentralization is morally good. But evidence is hard, testable data, like saying this specific protocol reduced reconciliation time by 30%. Please do not confuse the two. And avoid writing broad assertions like blockchain is always better. You need to show us exactly how it's better, step by step, using your criteria. So, I want to leave you with this somewhat provocative question to ponder before you head into peer review. Are your ethical mitigations operational, or are they just a closing afterthought? Like, are you actually designing a mechanical way to fix the trade-offs your system creates? Or did you just sort of staple a quick disclaimer to the end of your essay? Remember, the whole goal of this draft is to surface the strongest critiques now so that your final essay is completely unshakable. Well, there you have it. You've done the really hard work of turning an abstract philosophy into a concrete, tightly engineered blueprint. You've built your project increment, and you're totally ready for peer review. As always, I strongly encourage you to visit forge.college to learn more about this subject, explore our other awesome Web3 topics, and just keep building that foundation. Keep that structural mindset, embrace all the feedback from your peers, and I'll see you in the final phase of your capstone.